Hierarchy, a discriminatory ranked order. I'd wager feudalism, a socioeconomic order where lesser lords pledged fealty to greater lords, is among the first things to come to mind when most people think of formal hierarchies. This makes fiction in this setting an effective vehicle for examining how we influence and are influenced by these rankings. As this was a major theme of the inspiration for Black Clover, Kentaro Moira's Berserk, it's appropriate to me that the central theme of Black Clover is this. To even give a synopsis of Black Clover is essentially to list rankings. Asta and Yuna are abandoned as children to the bottom of the social rung, but are ranked further by their magic power and dream of attaining the highest rank attainable for their class as a Wizard King. Social hierarchy, ableism, and meritocratic hierarchy are immediately brought up so that we pay attention to how it will be immediately relevant to the story and characters. Asta has to navigate each of these to achieve his ultimate goal of creating a future without discrimination. And delving into that was the direction I initially wanted to take this in, and I will make that video in the future. But during its production, one of my great fears was realized. I've been warning that the continued pogroms in the West Bank and attacks on religious sites that have escalated ever since Netanyahu returned to office at the end of last year were creating a powder keg. On October 7th, 2023, militant factions within Gaza broke out of the prison Israel's forced them into, attacking both military and civilian targets and taking over 240 people hostage. Now, we've been told this came out of nowhere and that even providing context amounts to support for attacks on civilians.
It was like 15 9/11s.
Massive worldwide attack.
From what intelligence has gathered, it would be 9/11 times 100.
9/11 times 100? Jesus, that's...
Yes, 91,100.
But for those familiar with the racial domination that Palestinians have been subjected to for the last 75 years, what came next was tragically predictable.
They are committed to completely eliminate this evil from the world for our existence, and let me add, for the benefit of all of humanity, the entire people and all of Israeli leadership. We all embrace them and believe them. You must remember what Amalek has done to you, says our Holy Bible, and we do remember, and we are fighting. Our brave troops and combatants who are now in Gaza or around Gaza and in all other regions in Israel are joining this chain of Jewish heroes, a chain that has started 3,000 years ago from Joshua ben Nun until the heroes of 1948, the Six-Day War, the 73 October War, and all other wars in this country. Our hero troops, they have one supreme main goal: to completely defeat the murderous enemy and to guarantee our existence in this country. We've always said, never again. Never again is now.
But there are also people that your government has killed. You accept that, right? You've killed children, or do you deny that?
No, I do not. I do not. I do not. First of all, you don't know how those people died, those children.
Oh, wow.
But I have no confidence in the number that the Palestinians are using.
Colleagues, humanitarian aid is very, very important. But more food, water, and medical supplies will not bring us closer to a solution. Hamas doesn't care about the people in Gaza. All they are interested in is implementing Hitler's final solution. And nothing can change a genocidal ideology. It must be uprooted and eradicated.
You say Hamas's numbers. I should point out, just pull up on the screen, in the last two major Gaza conflicts, 2009 and 2014, the Israeli military's death tolls matched Hamas's health ministry death toll. So, and the UN human rights groups all agree that those numbers are credible. But look, your wider point is true.
Can I challenge that? Will you allow me to challenge that, please? Can I just challenge that? I'm going to challenge that. I'll try to be as brief as you are, sir. Those numbers are provided by Hamas. There's no independent verification. And secondly, more importantly, you have no idea how many of them are Hamas terrorists, combatants, and how many are civilians. Hamas would have you believe that they're all civilians, that they're all children. And here we have to say something that isn't said enough. Hamas, until now, we're destroying their military machine, and with that, we're eroding their control. But up until now, they've been in control of the Gaza Strip. And as a result, they control all the images coming out of Gaza. Have you seen one picture of a single dead Hamas terrorist in the fighting in Gaza? Not one. Is that by accident, or is that because Hamas can control the information?
You asked me a question and you
Gaza?
said you would be brief. I haven't, you're right, but I have seen lots of children with my own lying eyes being pulled from the rubble.
Because they're the pictures Hamas wants you to see. Exactly
and also
my point,
because they're
Mehdi.
dead.
They're the pictures Hamas.
It's about time we stop, those of us who support, as most of us do, Israel in this body, for apologizing for our support for Israel. There's no apology to be made. None. It is the best $3 billion investment we make. Were there not an Israel, the United States of America would have to invent an Israel to protect her interests.
Why did your military spokesman on Monday point to a calendar in Arabic and say these are the names of terrorists on them? That's false. Can you accept that here and now?
I'm not aware of the incident.
Let's put up the image. We have the image. You have no
I don't read Arabic. It doesn't help me. I have no comment. I'm not familiar with the incident.
Does your spokesman read Arabic?
Hang on, I have a question, Maddie. You're a journalist. Have you made a professional mistake ever? Not intentionally, but have you made a professional mistake?
Exactly, and I own up to it.
Have you made a mistake? So can you
own up to the mistake?
So if I've made mistakes, you've made mistakes, but there's a difference between making an honest mistake and between Hamas that deliberately exaggerates numbers to suit its propaganda purposes. There's a huge difference.
So it sounds like hold on. You said propaganda. Can we just deal with your colleague Ophir Gendelman's tweet? It's still up 7 days later. Why has it not come down? It's a Lebanese short film. We can put it on screen. It's not Palestinians faking their own injuries. Can we own up to that mistake and take that down? Is that not propaganda?
Once again, I understand that was also a mistake. And
so why is it still up 7 days later?
I'll speak to Ofer about it if you like. I'll speak to Ofer about it if you like. He's a friend of mine and a colleague. I quite like him. He's a good man. He's actually very effective. Why is he effective?
Well,
he speaks mother tongue level Arabic. I agree. He made a mistake.
What separates Israel, the United States, and other democracies when it comes to incredibly difficult situations like this is our respect for international law and, as appropriate, the laws of war. We do everything we can to make sure that in these situations we avoid civilian casualties. That is in direct contrast with Hamas, which uses people as human shields.
אנחנו מטילים מצור מוחלט על העיר עזה. אין חשמל, אין מזון, אין מים, אין דלק. הכל סגור. אנחנו נלחמים בחיות אדם ואנחנו נוהגים בהתאם.
Every piece of information regarding the situation on the ground that this council receives comes from Hamas, not international UN employees in Gaza. I will remind the council that Hamas, a genocidal terror organization, controls every facet of Gaza. Every number from the so-called Ministry of Health is Hamas. Many UNRWA workers in Gaza are themselves members of Hamas. The time has come to bust the myth of UN-supplied facts. Many ambulances drivers are Hamas members. Local contributors to international media are Hamas members. We saw this week that innocent photojournalists for Reuters and the New York Times not only documented Hamas's horrors, but crossed into Israel to film them with the terrorists themselves. Israel was delighted to sign the peace treaties with Egypt, with Jordan, the Abraham Accords. This is because Israel strives for peace, while the Palestinians strive for war, for terror. For them, the only solution, accepted solution, is one that prevents the existence of a Jewish state.
You don't think they killed one innocent person?
Not purposely.
Since 1948?
No, not
Are
purposely.
they that pure? Are they that
You don't have to be very pure
not
to kill a child. Not to kill a child.
Let me kill 550 in 50 days.
Because they're being used as human shields.
Let me show something we showed on this program last night. What I'm about to show this audience, these are cartoons that air in Gaza for young children that are taught to hate the Jewish people. You know, just watch this for a second, and I'll have you both comment. Watch that.
لأنه اليهود أطفالهم بعلموهم على الشراسة والدمار والقتل تقذف بيدها الصغيرة وجوه الدمار الحقيرة رآها العدو كره طفولتها كره بطولتها صوب البندقية وأطلق الرصاص.
So 4 young men shot while our chief correspondent Stuart Ramsey was there. He wasn't there very long for throwing stones, live rounds for throwing stones. Is that a proportionate response, or is it actually an inappropriate response given how inflamed tensions already are?
There is no room for nonsense. There is no room for taunting Israeli troops, as your reporter calls it, even though a stone can kill, and if somebody gets hit with a stone in the head, that's a lethal blow. So I don't think it's any game at play. And the level of tolerance for Palestinian violence and approaching Israeli communities is significantly lower. And I think it is about time that Palestinian leaders control where their young are. And if they want to be out of harm's way, they should stand clear of Israeli communities and clear of Israeli troops.
Professor West,
yes.
If you brainwash and indoctrinate young children, that you're teaching them to hate from that young age. Not good.
No.
Here's the problem.
Any kind of inculcation of hatred is immoral and wrong.
Here's the problem I have with your
brothers
piece.
And others, if there's any hatred of anybody, including Palestinians,
would you
Rashida Tlaib has the, I don't even want to call it the Palestinian flag because they're not a state, they're a territory that's about to probably get eviscerated and go away here shortly as we're going to turn that into a parking lot.
I pray for peace. No more rockets from Gaza and no more bombs falling down on the people of Gaza. God protect the children. God protect children. Let's end all the horror and all the heartbreak in the Holy Land. Let's end all of it. Let's end all of it. But I'll be honest in closing. When I think about what's happening over there, I don't feel powerful to do something about what's happening over there. What I do feel powerful is to maybe do something about what's happening here. Let's take a stand here against anti-Jewish bigotry. Let's take a stand against Muslim. Let's take a stand here against hatred. Let's take a stand here against hatred of all kinds. I don't want any Jewish mother to be afraid here to drop her baby off at the JCC. I don't want that. I don't want that.
You are stealing my house.
And if I don't steal it, someone else is going to steal it.
No one is allowed to steal it, يا عمي.
הזכות שלי, של אשתי, של הילדים שלי, להסתובב בכבישי יהודה ושומרון, יותר חשוב מזכות התנועה של הערבים. סליחה מוחמד, אבל זו המציאות.
We understand that a teenager has been shot. Is this the right way to handle this situation, given that tensions are already rising and emotions are already quite high?
Well, we're talking about the release of attempted murderers. You call them children, but we're talking about teenagers who stabbed other teenagers. We're talking about...
That's not my question, Deputy Mayor. I totally and fully understand that they have been accused.
I'm giving you the context.
I understand, but if I can, Deputy Mayor, I'm just going to interrupt you. I'm fully aware of...
I'm answering the
Deputy
question.
Mayor, I'm fully aware of what they've been...
part of the deal was that there would be no celebrations. And the reason that these clashes are occurring is because exactly against the deal that there would be no celebrations celebrating the release of attempted murderers in East Jerusalem, in my city, where many people, many of the victims live side by side with the people who try to kill them. Part of the deal was that they would not have these celebrations. And if the clashes are occurring, it's exactly because of that.
This IDF animation, posted in late October, claims to represent a Hamas tunnel system underneath the hospital. But having been inside Al-Shifa since early Wednesday, Israel's yet to produce evidence of the tunnels. It has allowed the BBC and Fox News to film at the hospital, though only locations of Israel's choice.
This is what they found.
Israel also released its own 7-minute video, which BBC Verify has analysed. A watch, visible in that video, suggests it was filmed a few hours before the BBC arrived. And this IDF video was posted, then deleted, then reposted, this time without a section referring to an Israeli soldier who'd been held hostage.
I don't know when this was used the last time.
Also in the video, we see a room with an MRI machine.
And if you zoom in and we get some light over here, what you'll be able to see is military equipment.
The BBC was shown the same room. And what we see in the two videos doesn't precisely match. For example, there's one gun in the IDF video, two by the time of the BBC footage. Israel has told BBC Verify this is because more weaponry and terrorist assets were discovered throughout the day.
And as always, an AK-47.
Israel also says its video is a single shot with no edits. But this appears to be an edit. We don't know the reasons for that edit, nor how significant it is. The IDF, though, says suggestions it's manipulating the media are incorrect. The IDF video also shows military equipment in other locations, though we can't verify how it came to be there. And what we see in this IDF video doesn't equate to Israel's description of Al-Shifa as an operational command center for Hamas. The US is using a different phrase, saying Al-Shifa was used as a command and control node.
Here's a situation. You have a circumstance where the first war crime is being committed by Hamas by having their headquarters, their military, hidden under a hospital. And that's a fact. That's what's happened. Israel did not go in with a large number of troops, did not raid, did not rush everything down. They've gone in, and they've gone in with their soldiers carrying weapons or guns. They were told, let me be precise. We've discussed the need for them to be incredibly careful. You have a circumstance where you know there is a fair number of Hamas terrorists. Hamas has already said publicly that they plan on attacking Israel again, like they did before, do everything, cutting babies' heads off to burning women and children alive. And so the idea that they're going to just stop and not do anything is not realistic. This is not the carpet bombing. This is a different thing. They're going through these tunnels. They're going in the hospital.
I always say to my friends when they say those things to you, I say, imagine our circumstance in the world were there no Israel. How many battleships would there be? How many troops would be stationed? You know, I used to say early on when I was a kid, I'd say, when I was a young senator, I'd say, if I were a Jew, I'd be a Zionist. I am a Zionist. You don't have to be a Jew to be a Zionist.
Progress occurs in the Middle East when everyone knows there's simply no space between the United States and Israel. There is no space between the United States and Israel when it comes to Israel's security. There is only one nation in the world that has unequivocally, without hesitation, and consistently confronted the efforts to delegitimize Israel. At every point in our administration, at every juncture, we've stood up on the legitimacy, on behalf of the legitimacy of the state of Israel.
The security of Israel and the United States is inextricably tied, and we will never, ever, ever abandon Israel out of our own self-interest.
No two genocides are the same. But they all share similar characteristics. It never comes out of nowhere, and it's never an accident. It's the ultimate result of dehumanization by placing entire groups of people in a rank order beneath the dominant group. We can elevate our position by taking from those we've placed beneath us. The nobles of Clover Kingdom coveted the land and the mana of the Elves and justified their genocide against the people who'd offered to live with them without discrimination as defending themselves against the Elves who want to kill all humans. Just as Israel made the first move against the Palestinians who had offered a one secular state solution with equal rights by claiming to be defending themselves against the Arabs who wanted to kill all the Jews. The weapon of choice is to trap civilians and attack them from the sky with overwhelming force, something Israel calls its Dahiya doctrine. Just as Israel attacked an enemy unable to mount an effective resistance in 1947 and 1967, they are doing so again right now. Zagrid has one of the most powerful reveals I've seen, derailing the plot and making it his own, draining even the light, color, and music. At this point, he really feels like the Christian devil, a force of pure evil whispering in people's ears, tempting them to bring a little bit more of hell to Earth. We see how he goes from whispering in the ears of the human nobles to Licht, taking over the soul of the noble elder of the Elves. It's only through the love of Lumiere that Licht becomes a demon and does not become a murderer. But 500 years later, all that's remembered is the wrath and the hatred of the Elves. And so it seems for the Elves themselves. Yet we see that dehumanizing propaganda about the Elves, as pervasive as it is, clearly isn't true. And to drive that point in, the Elves call their enemies human to dehumanize them. Though consumed by and manipulated towards hatred of the Elves, they've not lost themselves to despair and become something that isn't an elf at all, something evil. Though still dreaming, the elf elder recognizes only one thing can cut through that despair. Something we have seen and been told already. And it isn't the Demon Destroyer sword. It's the future that Licht, Tetia, Sekre, and Lumiere built together.
You foolish girl. You do know how you got into this mess, don't you? The thing is, you're a resident of the Clover Kingdom. And up until recently, that applied to me too. But me, I was a bit different. You see, I had my true name bestowed upon me by Master Licht. What I mean is, we're special, and you're not. In other words, you're nothing but trash, and so we can treat you how we want.
Let us live together. It is not you who should be despairing, but the people of the Clover Kingdom. You must remember your true self.
Congratulations to the happy couple!
Is this? It can't be!
Humans?
I'll kill you. We had those once as well, our own dreams and bonds, until you humans destroyed them! The Eye of the Midnight Sun had golden dreams and bombs of blood!
What is it like to grow up dreaming of being friends with the people who will one day murder you unprovoked? Veto is one of the gentlest of the elves. The hatred he endured threw him into a pit of despair so deep he could only drag those around him into it. This is a story for many whose lives are shattered by war, and it's no accident that the Eye of the Midnight Sun is referred to as a terrorist organization.
Victory is all we need! The Eye of the Midnight Sun is a contemptible terrorist organization! If we don't pull it up by the roots ourselves, our nation will never know peace!
Now, terrorism is an anachronism, and it didn't exist the way we think of it today in the Middle Ages. The idea of terrorism comes from the terror of the French Revolution, a supposedly righteous, violent response to regimes that make excessive, everyday use of violence. Terrorism emerged within absolute monarchies as a way to spur political change, and the story is the same in Black Clover, with magic filling in for technology. Due to the advent of trains and mass media, it became possible for the public to know of an attack right away, and so anarchists began practicing propaganda of the deed. We see exactly how spatial magic for delivery of messages, along with Marx's memory magic, allows the Eye of the Midnight Sun to do exactly this, like they did in the capital with their attack on Fuegoleon. Tabata has portrayed not just genocide, but also terrorism in a very realistic way. To one in such deep despair, hope appears as a despair-eating demon. Asta and Liba, like Licht, who they have inherited their grimoire from, have already drank deep of their own despair, pulled themselves back from the edge, and defined themselves in doing so. Lichta's love pulled Liba from the depths of despair, and his intense anger at the power that hurt his mother manifests in the opposite of magic power. Asta's inferiority complex has given him laser focus on what he is capable of, allowing him to rise from despair and be chosen by the Five-Leaf Grimoire. Where Rufel was the most excited about being friends with humans, Fana was probably the most excited for a future where love formed the bridge between humans and elves. The human Fana loved Mars so much that she was willing to sacrifice everything for his freedom. Both human and elf Fana were such joyous people, as people full of love typically are. Yet such cruelty can engulf the flames of passion, with burning hatred towards those who hurt the people we love. Only an offer of love and peace can quench the flames of war.
Don't think you won, even for a second!
Let's call it quits already.
Huh?
After all now, this land is made of love and peace!
No, it's not. Our hatred can't be stamped out, ever!
No way!
Fana! It's me, remember? I'm so sorry. I didn't have the strength to fight beside you back then. But please forgive me!
You're a girl, Fana. It's not a good idea to overdo it. If I get out, I'll wait. I promise I will.
He did this. He's the only one that knows this place. I knew it! That human betrayed all of us! Now that I've found you again in the outside world, let's keep our promise, okay?
Someday, we'll see the world.
Let us explore together!
We said we would, so let's go.
Right. Fauna.
What's wrong?
It's one of the greatest ironies of the 21st century that Genocide Joe, after running crying into Bibi's arms and telling him that, he believed him that Israel would never ever attack a hospital for any reason, and warned him, not to make the same mistakes the U.S. made after 9/11. We see all the people who were for the Iraq War only to, and I don't have enough scare quotes for this one, regret getting all those government contracts with Iraq, giving Israel a blank check to do exactly the same thing that we call mistakes today.
What are the chances of a Gaza ceasefire? None. No possibility.
People who are calling for a ceasefire now do not understand Hamas. That is not possible. It would be such a gift to Hamas because they would spend whatever time there was a ceasefire in effect rebuilding their armaments, creating stronger positions to be able to fend off an eventual assault by the Israelis. So we're in a very different world. I don't think it had to be the world we're in, but that's where we are, and we've got to figure our way forward.
Anyone who supports a ceasefire basically supports Hamas' continued reign of terror in Gaza.
Do you support a ceasefire? And if not, why not?
Well, I don't know how you can have a ceasefire, permanent ceasefire, with an organization like Hamas, which is dedicated to turmoil and chaos and destroying the state of Israel. And I think what the Arab countries in the region understand, that Hamas has got to go.
Few people were more vindicated than the critics of America's response to 9/11. I was just a middle schooler at the time, but 9/11 and its aftermath got me interested in politics. The insane, bloodthirsty rhetoric and extreme Islamophobia was such a shift for me. Normal kids I knew went from having no opinion on the Middle East to saying things like, "I want to drink Iraqi blood," just from how much the war propaganda and dehumanization saturated our culture as the necessary justification for war. So, as one of those vindicated critics, let me say, what Israel and the US should have done is the exact opposite of what they did. The Taliban was willing to extradite bin Laden, but, of course, we don't negotiate with terrorists. We don't need a trial because we know he's guilty and, we invaded anyway. Iraq had no weapons of mass destruction, and the counter-terror campaign against al-Qaeda in Iraq created ISIS. When you've pushed a population into taking actions that extreme, the only way to defuse the situation is through diplomacy and not domination.
They did oust a more brutal regime, the Taliban.
That wasn't even a war aim. That wasn't even a war aim. Wasn't even a war aim.
But is that a moral thing to do? They did get rid of a brutal regime. There was celebration in now.
Good, fine. Let them bomb Israel and get rid of the brutal regime there. This is the 35th year of a harsh, brutal, and vicious occupation, supported unilaterally by the United States, constant terror and atrocities. Suppose Palestinians say, well, we're under terrorist attack for 35 years, therefore we have a right to carry out suicide bombings.
Which is what they say.
Do you accept this? Does anybody accept it?
Nobody accepts
All
it.
right, then how come everyone accepts the Israeli claim to be doing it, which is a much weaker claim? They are the military occupiers. Those who defend suicide bombing, and there are very few, don't have a leg to stand on. Those who defend the Israeli atrocities, including the U.S. government, most intellectual opinion, a good bit of the West generally, they don't have a leg to stand on either, and they have a much weaker position.
How do you distinguish between that kind of what you describe as terrorism and what they are saying, Osama bin Laden, who's a terrorist? Make the distinction.
It's very simple. If they do it, it's terrorism. If we do it, it's counterterrorism. That's a historical universal. Go back to Nazi propaganda, see? most extreme mass murderers ever. If you look at Nazi propaganda, it's exactly what they said. They said they are defending the populations and the legitimate governments of Europe.
Does that disqualify the U.S. from their intervening in any other way?
Look, the Taliban are a terrorist state. That fact doesn't disqualify them from bombing Washington. What disqualifies from doing that is even if they were Mahatma Gandhi, they shouldn't do it. Nobody except the ultra-right-wing jingoists like Kaplan is comparing atrocities by various countries. What honest people are saying is that we should pay attention to our own crimes and stop committing them. This would be true even if we were killing one person, okay? And it's even more true when we're killing millions of people.
Asta naturally de-escalates the situation and brings the most important party back to the negotiating table. Only Asta's love for his new friend is able to free Mars from his self-hatred so that he can love Fauna. Now, I know Tabata spells it Raya, but the pun is obvious, and I love the name Liar the Disloyal. Now, Liar stood out to me like few characters have. The traitor is a classic trope for an antagonist, but one who's openly disloyal to his own allies is novel, and a statement on the nature of lies, that they diminish our fidelity towards ourselves and those we love. Almost every scene with Liar reinforces this. From the moment he agrees to pretend that Patri is Licht, it's one lie after another, moving him away from Licht, despite Liar telling himself he's putting his own desire to see his friend over his friend's desires. In a truly gorgeous bit of visual storytelling, Tabata shows us how Liar, blinded by the light of the future and deliberately walking away from Licht, only to inadvertently walk right towards his reincarnated son. Despite his lies, he still can't escape his own feelings.
Apparently, we have a real tricky bunch on our hands, seeing as Licht isn't around. This is gonna be a pain. Guess I'll have to suck it up.
Where Zagred's lies made the genocide of the Elves possible, it's Liar that makes the genocide of humans possible. The perpetrators of genocide rationalize seeing themselves as the victims, as being humane, even relatively humane to those they've dehumanized, as having their actions forced for the sake of survival, and violence against the dehumanized group as being righteous. Liar knows this isn't true, but he tells the lies anyway, because like Noel, he's deeply dishonest with himself, saying he's a bad person, dishonoring the memory of Licht, who told him how, as the most sensitive of the elves, the mana had blessed him with copy magic. Now, when we all imagine the personification of lies in our world, I'm sure we're all thinking of the same thing. The IDF, of course. The alternate reality created by Hasbara, the Israeli euphemism for propaganda, has gotten so bad that even prominent Israeli journalists recognize that few people outside Israel actually believe it. Despite this, because Israel is literally a part of the United States military-industrial complex, it receives all the associated perks, including near unanimous support from U.S. and Western leaders, as well as Western media citing the IDF uncritically, to the point that it took claiming that a calendar justified sieging, bombing, and raiding a hospital after a month and a half of outrageous lies and deliberately targeting civilians to get some Western media outlets like CNN and the BBC to start questioning IDF claims. The narrative that Palestinians are not human is so deeply entrenched into Western beliefs by the war on terror that it's the default position that we have to argue against. It's why a simple call for Palestinians to be free gets treated as a call for genocide, while dozens of actual calls for genocide, coming alongside the slaughter of thousands of civilians, children, and the deprivation of food, water, medicine, and humanitarian aid, are treated as precise strikes, which only occasionally hurt some civilians that, Hamas is using as human shields anyway. And Then the Hamas-controlled Ministry of Health reports those as deaths. Well, they play dead in Pallywood videos that get uncritically eaten up by naive woke scolds like me. So I love that Asta is one of those naive woke scolds, pushing back against the dehumanization of the elves to try to reach an understanding with them. Liar tried to turn away from the future of Licht and Tetia's child, but it stands right before him. Seeing Asta's choice to try to understand, Mimosa's choice to save whoever she can without discrimination, and the hole in his chest his lies earned him, he finally understands he was in the wrong and ceases to be an antagonist. The genocide of the elves, to me, was always analogous to the genocide of indigenous people, with the twist of reincarnation magic. The wealth taken from the elves has only been used to entrench and further corrupt the hierarchies of the colonial metropole. 500 years later, we are following the perspective of human settlers, who make it just as clear as Licht and Lumiere had that the problem isn't elves or humans, it's discrimination, and that only together can they build a future without it. The Wizard King can be the inspiration for that future, and 500 years later, it isn't too late. The themes of discrimination leading to crimes against humanity and ultimately genocide feels central, because it's not just with the elves. I'm leaving out manga spoilers for this video, though I plan to expand on the manga content later, but the Dark Triad arc comes with the threat of genocide of 90% of humanity. Conrad plans on a genocide with the resurrection for those he deems worthy in a rather literal example of palingenesis. Lord Freeze from Quartet Knights is willing to throw in his lot with anyone who will grant his revenge, in this case the Eye of the Midnight Sun. Freeze, Conrad, Patri, and Zara were all considered inferior, and were betrayed and lost everything to the Clover nobles. Freeze, Conrad, Patri, and Liba all learned their violence from their oppressors, yet we see that the impact one person, Zara, has by fighting discrimination despite everything. Even though he dies without accomplishing much of anything, he succeeds at so much of what he sets out to do through Zora, Julius, and Asta, especially considering what Julius and Asta do for the others. Yet everyone from John Hagee to Bernie Sanders has told us that the only solution is a military solution, that Palestinians need their future built for them rather than being allowed to do it themselves because they'll make the wrong choices. That a ceasefire now, releasing all hostages on both sides, and real peace negotiation is an impossible and naive policy prescription, even though all real human rights organizations are saying that a ceasefire is the only way to protect civilians on both sides. And 73% of Gazans want a peaceful resolution. So we can't give in to hatred, and despair, and unfaithfulness. We must respond with love, hope, and solidarity. We need to call for a ceasefire now. Alright, I love you. Abolish Israel.